thought I would do a quick video on just a little bit of how I would handle color mixing on this rose and this lily. So color-wise, I've got my kind of my travel palette, everyday palette. I've got my warm and cools of each of my primaries in here. Here's my colors I'm working with. As I look at these, I'll start with the rose. So I see kind of a peachy orange in here. I definitely see yellow, depending on how I turn it in the light. So I've got light struck areas, shadow areas, very pale pink on the outer edges of the petals. I've got a shadow values further in that are also quite chromatic or full of color. Got the dark green leaves. Over here I've got a slightly lighter green on the lily, and of course the inner ivory white cream area. So I guess I could start easy with the light cream on the inside of that lily. So yellow, let's see, I don't think it would matter whether I go warm or cool on my yellow. I'm just using an older brush, not one of my better brushes, because with color mixing, not worried about brush strokes. I'm not worried about keeping a good point. I don't want to wear out my good brushes. So just an average, using a pointed round, medium size would work. So I've got yellow. To knock back or mute yellow, I'm going to use purple. I do have a purple in my mix, in my palette here, just a touch of that, little too much. Well, maybe not. If I tested that out, that still looks yellow. It didn't end up turning purple. If I want to add a little hint of green to that, as it's a little too on the orange side, I could just go over here to my blues. I could use cerulean. It's a lot. Don't want that much on my brush. That definitely adds a hint of green. Very subtle, almost too much. I would have to either go back, add a little more yellow to that, or if I tried, let's add another little bit of that mixture, little purple. Back to what I had, although it's a little bit more paint in the mix. If I try my ultramarine blue, let's see, very subtle shifts with this. So here's my ultramarine blue. That's better. This on watercolor paper would just be a subtle yellow, greenish yellow value or color, similar to this. If I wanted to add a little more yellow to it, just the lightest hint. There we go. For the inner shadow part, that would be, let's see, that cerulean is a nice mix. If it goes too green, then I'll just dip into my red. I've got alizarin crimson here. So still staying with something relatively neutral. A little bit darker value, even though there's not a lot of paint here. I wanted to take it even further using my cool yellow. Let's go back to that original mix. See how that shifted it purple, really muted brownish purple. It's definitely a darker color. Does that make a good shadow color? Pretty good. I want to go a little cooler with it, so, or a little more on the blue side. So then back to my ultramarine blue. Almost shifts it green. A little darker, a little cooler. If I wanted to, with my layering, have a yellow under there, add in a little more yellow to see what that would look like. But just to test my colors, that's working pretty good. The green on the outside, and I'm using cool yellow on this. I don't know, it just seems to fit well. I would use a warmer yellow, I think, on my rose for the oranges, but this, everything to me with the lily kind of leans to the green side of yellow. So back to my yellow. Again, I'm mixing green for the lower part of the lily, the stem, my French ultramarine blue, just to get started with a green. So this is a very chromatic green because it's straight yellow and blue. A little more paint in there. I want to go a little more on the yellow side than blue. So a little bit of a greenier green, yellowy green. Too chromatic, but what I can do is mix in a red, mix in a brown, or mix in a purple. All of those are on the warm side of the color wheel, and they're opposite, especially red is opposite of green, so that's immediately going to knock that green down or mute that green. There we go. How much I put in is how much I want to shift it. That is definitely better. Is it too much? Okay, maybe. Then let's go back to a little more blue. Start with the blue. That's a little cooler. That is cooler than that. Do you see the yellow in there? More of a muted green. So if I go back again to my original yellow and my ultramarine blue, that ultramarine has really, in a way, granulated. Okay, so let's try, let's go back and mute with the red. And let's add a little more yellow. Let's really ramp up that yellow. So same three colors here. A little too much red, or took the red a little further. This had blue added. This is more strong in the yellow. So this right here looks more chromatic than those two. It's visually maybe not as dark as this if I put this down a little thicker, but this matches very well with the cream I have at the top. That looks more like what I'm looking at. If I wanted to take this darker, I would just add more of those three pigments in the mix to make that darker. So more yellow, definitely more blue, more red. And I'm just, as I add each one, I'm just seeing how they shift. If it gets too muddy, okay, more yellow. If I need to add a deeper yellow, like an ochre, a sienna, I might have to add less red because those are more earth-toned yellows, but they are darker. I could also go in with that was sienna. I'm sorry, yeah, raw sienna. So blue, let's get some of that green back. There we go, that shifted it to a good green. And that's already quite muted. Little bit darker, a little more muted. So let's try a warm yellow. It's going to be a little darker. That brought the yellow back. That looks good. But I want it more chromatic, more color, more green. So warmer yellow, my same ultramarine blue, not much red. There we go. That looks really good. So that shadow, this more in the light. And there's my creams for the upper part of the lily. Stay tuned for part 2, and I'll break down the rose with the colors I would use.